Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Financial Issues. Great to be here with you today. Seth Udinsky, Sam Case, the FISM Studio A team here in our Philadelphia studios. Wonderful to have you today on the show this morning. Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. We're live this morning and we got a lot to discuss. So let's get right to it here, folks. We got your calls and questions, 610-363-1110. We'll get to some of your questions later on in the program for sure. I've got that lined up in the show notes. But of course, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your voice. So call in if you've got a question, 610-363-1110. Also, egg prices been cooling off a little bit. Some good news there. We'll try to make sense of what this could mean here. They're cooling off a little bit, certainly not to the levels that they perhaps once were. We'll see about that later on in the show. Also, the Oklahoma High Court has blocked a mandate to allow over 50,000 Bibles to be placed in public schools in that state. We'll talk about why the gospel is so desperately needed in public schools with our campaign with Crossroads Kids Club. Also, we'll hear what our founder, Dan Celia, had to say about the state of public education in the United States. I'll leave you with that hook there because it's a doozy, as usual, from Dan Celia. Also, economic fears continue to grow with a market that cannot seem to make sense of the flurry of news concerning American tariffs. We'll talk about that as well as the markets, which right now appear to be trending in the positive direction. A complete shakeup from yesterday. Great to be here with you all today on the show. Baby's not here yet, which means I'm here, which is fun. Sam, good to have you here, buddy. How you feeling today? You ready for some fun?
I'm feeling pretty good for a Wednesday. You know,
yeah, it's not
the
bad.
Most midday, I would have to imagine.
It is.
Literally, it's mid.
It is.
It's
As Dan used to say, hump day. It is the hump day. So good to be here with you all today on this Wednesday. All right, Sam, let's get right to it. The big news from yesterday, of course, was all the tariff talks with Canada, with the electricity potentially being blocked, the different things like that. Give us a sense of this here, Sam, because there was a lot of things that happened yesterday. What do we got?
Well, Trump continues to draw ire from the Great White North. He threatened to respond to Ontario's electricity tariff by doubling tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum imports, bringing them all the way up to 50%. It comes after Ontario on Monday announced a 25% tariff on electricity. And you might ask, what's up with that? How much is that going to affect America? Well, it turns out 1.5 million homes in New York, Michigan, and Minnesota do get their electricity from Ontario. So that's not that many people, but still it's enough that it could cause a problem for the United States and cause a problem for Donald Trump with those potential voters. Trump says he'll declare a national emergency on electricity for the affected areas. That's if this actually does develop, and we'll get to that in a second. Ontario Premier Doug Ford said he plans to respond and suggested he'd even shut down energy exports entirely if Trump moves ahead with even more tariffs on April 2nd. Here is the Premier.
The two greatest countries in the world fighting like this does not make sense. But I will respond appropriately on the electricity. Stay tuned.
So what does that look like? What are the potential responses?
Well, we'll see. I'll talk to the team and we'll make an appropriate response to President Trump.
So you hear there, Seth, Doug's sound like a big boy. He thinks he's pretty tough.
Yeah.
At least he did until yesterday afternoon. He said, you know what? It's just not worth it. We're dropping the tariffs altogether. Trump has also since dropped his threat to double those tariffs. However, that is not the end of the trade tensions as, while things are smoothing out a little bit with Canada, Trump is heating things up with the EU as he has now launched his across-the-board tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, with the EU, at least for now, vowing to respond in kind. We don't know what that looks like exactly, but they say we must respond. We'll see if that actually pans out. If Canada's situation tells us anything, I have a feeling it's not going to last too long.
Yeah, Sam, we seem to be hearing the same story over and over again. All these countries acting tough, talking tough, and then I don't know if they get wise or they realize who they're dealing with, and then they bow down to what Trump wants. It's very interesting. I got a chuckle because when Premier Doug Ford said, he made the comment about it's the two greatest countries in the world. Is Canada really the second greatest country
I
in the
really
world?
thought that. I was like, I don't know. Is it really?
Nothing against Canada, nothing against our friends directly to the north, but that seemed to be kind of a play to try to put Canada on a level similar to the United States, and I'm just not so sure that that's really even in the realm of reality. So it is, Sam, just another casualty in Trump's effort to be America first. I like it. Listen, if I've got my citizens who are depending upon another country to provide electricity, that seems to be the goal here. Is he wants American electricity. He wants to be able to be self-sustaining in that. I think it's a great thing. Honestly, I think it's a great thing for us personally. It is really curious to see so many world leaders kind of talking the tough talk and then coming to the table once they realize what they're dealing with. I'd be curious to see if many of them think, this is going to be a lot like it was in the last 4 years, and then they talk with Trump and they realize how different he is from Biden, and maybe they get somewhat of a wake-up call there. Interesting stuff for sure. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, it just shows how economically powerful the United States is.
For sure.
I mean, on the face of it, you get a little nervous about this type of stuff because this is how actual trade wars begin. A little tit for tat here and there. We've seen in the media all the time, the second Trump launches a tariff, they say it's a trade war. That's not really true. But this kind of behavior of, I'm going to slap a 25% tariff, therefore I'm going to respond with a 50% tariff, that's how you actually get into a trade war. But thankfully, the United States economy is so much stronger than Canada's that they're realizing, we just cannot withstand that kind of dragged out back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff there, Sam. Thanks for bringing us that. We'll keep an eye on that for sure, but that really was the big news of the day yesterday, and that had a lot to do with what the markets did yesterday. So they continue their downward trend on that news that we just talked about. By midday, all the indices were negative. The NASDAQ was the lone one that was kind of hanging right around the flat line. Now, there was an interesting turn we saw yesterday, folks. Late afternoon, the indices turned course. They found some breathing room on the heels of this news, but also, Sam, speaking of a lot of other countries coming to the table, we heard some very interesting news from Ukraine that there seems to be now a real potential for a ceasefire. Sam, do you have any updates on that, by the way? Is there anything more than just we've heard that basically Ukraine is willing to at least have the conversation about this 30-day ceasefire?
So my understanding, this is Ukraine's plan, right? Yeah. They say that here's the cards we're going to put on the table. Right now, we're waiting to see what Russia's going to do with it. They said as of this morning that they're reviewing the plan, but other than that, there's been no true movement forward other than saying, we're taking a look at it.
Yeah. So we might see some news break of that today. If it happens during the show, we'll be sure to let you all know about it, folks. At any rate, the markets digested all of that, and so nearing the final bell, only the tech-heavy NASDAQ was green. It was hanging on for dear life. None of the major indices ended up finishing positive, but I do wonder if they finished far closer to the flat line than perhaps they would have had these different things not taken place. So the Dow Jones finished well below 1%. The S&P 500 was down 0.75%, and the NASDAQ was only a little bit below the flat line. Now, folks, we did see some entrances into correction territory, and I just want to remind you, right now the S&P 500 is on the verge of correction territory. Just for our new listeners, perhaps you're hearing the show and you're hearing these terms thrown out. I want to make sure that you're not falling too behind. Correction territory just refers to whenever an index following a big climb where it hits a high retreats back up to 10% from where its high was. So this happened yesterday, actually. The S&P 500 hit that 10% in the negative correction mark during yesterday's session. It managed to claw slightly up from that. The NASDAQ composite, however, that hit correction territory on Monday, and that's been down a little more than 13% from its December all-time highs. So that's kind of what we're looking like there. You might be hearing some more talk about correction territory. I personally don't feel like this is something to panic about, and I'm glad that the accepted vernacular is correction territory and not something like the indices have plummeted, because really it is just a natural ebb and flow of the markets, and we saw that yesterday. So,
well, no, if you're going to read CNBC all the time, you'll see that word plummet, but they'll call any dip in the market a plummet a dramatic drop.
Sure will. Yeah. Which is why you have to be able to read these things with a sound mind, folks, for sure. Especially like Sam, you said CNBC or Financial Times or any of those other things.
So the clicks, though.
It is. It certainly does. So the pre-markets this morning, they were on the rise, awaiting the consumer price index reading for February, which we got just before the show broke. Prices increased at a softer rate than expected. They were up 2.8% in February. Excluding food and energy, core CPI rose 0.2% on the month. That was at a 3.1% increase on a 12-month basis. Overall, the market seemed very pleased with that. And right now, they're pricing in to open very positively. So the Dow Jones in the pre-market currently is up right around 0.75%. As I refresh my screen here, there we go. The S&P 500 is well above 1%, and the NASDAQ is creeping up towards 2% to open in the positive. So it's looking like it could be a good day. Here's again, the deal is any kind of news could throw the markets one way or the other, it feels like. So that's what we're looking like today, folks, in the markets. Coming up next here, we'll talk about that Bible block mandate from the Oklahoma Supreme Court. We also have a question there from John, which we'll get to here on Financial Issues. Busy show here, folks, and I'm grateful that you've decided to join us today for the program. We got more financial issues coming up right after this break. Make sure to get your calls queued up if you're interested. 610-363-1110. We'll be right back.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Every day, a child walks into school carrying more than just a backpack. This child carries the weight of loneliness and spiritual darkness. But there is hope.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He pays for our sins.
By sponsoring a child, you could help them discover Jesus. Go now to reachOurSchools.com and bring the light of Christ into the life of a child. That's reachOurSchools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Folks, I see a lot of you in the chat talking about yesterday we saw on Fox Business, Charles Payne had a segment devoted to faith-based investing and biblically responsible investing. If we have time later in the show, we'll kind of do a little reaction to that. So interesting stuff there for sure. I'm sure many of you got to see that there. Sam, let's get to a question here. Many partners have been asking about E36, and I know John in Texas in particular is not the only one, but his question kind of sparked this. So what do we have from John in Texas?
Well, John is itching to know. Tell me how the drop in E36 affects the value, please.
John, I appreciate that question, and I want to use this as an opportunity to point you to the partner commentary this week. This is a great partner commentary that Shanna put out, and I believe that she answers that question in great detail. So E36 right now currently sits on the broad list, but please do, folks, check out the partner commentary from this week. It has been posted, and Shanna spends a good deal of time later on in that commentary addressing this question because it is one that many of you have been asking talking about, and we want to certainly make some sense of it. So, John, check out the partner commentary. Just a reminder, folks, where you can find that. It's real easy. Under the partner tab, it's underneath the buy list. It's the top section on the buy list, commentary and buy list. So if you go partner tab, underneath of the buy list and that drop down, it's commentary and buy list. And right at the top of the page there is the partner commentary, updated as of several days ago. John, I hope that's helpful for you, brother. Make sure to go read that whenever you have the chance. All right, Sam, let's get to this headline here that I think is really important for us as we talk about religious freedom, especially in public schools. The state of Oklahoma has sadly blocked a Bible mandate. What can you tell us about this?
That's right, Seth, at least for now. So the Oklahoma Supreme Court this week has temporarily blocked a measure that would have purchased 55,000 Bibles for public schools. Some background for what's going on here. Last year, Oklahoma's superintendent of public instruction, Ryan Walters, he announced the state would be including the Bible into public schools' social studies program, specifically saying that the Bible is very necessary for understanding American history because the founders reference it all the time and it informs their worldview on which this country is founded, which seems to make sense to me. But there were plenty of lawsuits, and now the high court is halting that ruling or that law. Well, the lower court considers legal challenges, some people arguing that the order interferes with parents' ability to direct the religious and moral upbringing of their children.
Yeah, Sam, let me first say, good on Oklahoma Superintendent Walters. He is exactly right. He is exactly right. The Bible, you can't understand American history without the Bible. You simply can't.
Let alone, there's so many things you can't understand without the Bible. I remember in high school, we were reading Arthur Miller's The Crucible, which is about the witch trials back in the day. Mm-hmm. So it's full of biblical language, and someone refers to someone else in that book as Pontius Pilate, and it was like me and one other kid who was a Christian who knew what was actually being referenced there. So it's just amazing. How are you going to understand English, history, so many things if you don't have even like a cursory knowledge of the Bible?
Absolutely. Sam, you guys had a leg up because you knew the Bible.
It was amazing. And I think the teacher knew. They looked at the two of us and said, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's spot on here, folks. We have to understand this. This is a stewardship issue for our country. We desperately need the gospel in public schools for a variety of reasons. But one of them is that there's still a fanatic effort from the elites in this country to keep the Christian worldview out of public schools, which truthfully just baffles me how this is even being considered, because the Christian worldview is the foundational worldview of thought and philosophy for our country. Like it or not, I'll just come out and say it. I believe the United States is a Christian nation. We were founded on Christian principles by Christian men. So to take the very core of our founding out of it is to essentially strip the heart out of the country. We need this. We need this. And let's not forget, for 1,500 years of human history, Sam, in the West, the Bible was rightly considered the chief academic book, at least one of them, one of the chief academic books in a student's curriculum. You know, this fellow here, Mr. Walters, rightly talks about how important the Bible is for understanding history, which we often talk about, definitely. But it's also, we're talking about philosophy, theology, even science as well. They all find their source and meaning in the Word of God. They all do. And so we need a return to this, folks. And I am very thrilled that the soil seems to be ripe for this, Sam. It really does. And maybe it's part of the cultural change that we've seen in the last several months or so. But I do think there's also some real promising signs in the upcoming generations. This is just one example, Sam. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they made a great point. Where has evolution gone? It seems like people don't really talk about evolution all that much anymore. I think because they're realizing just how foolish it is. It was in our generation's curriculum a lot. It doesn't seem to be in this generation's as much. Now, I might be misreading the waters here, but it seems like that's part of this cultural change. And so the ground is ripe for the gospel to return to the public school.
Well, I don't know anything about evolution. I've not been in school for a long time, so I can't tell you whether it's being taught or not. But I can tell you I saw a fascinating study that said the decline, at least, in religiosity. I don't know if it was specifically Christianity or not, but the drop-off in at least religious faith in general among young people has plateaued. So it's not going up. It's not like we're getting more Christians, but at least that drop that we've been seeing for decades upon decades, it's kind of petered out now, which could be a good sign.
It seems like it. Absolutely. So, folks, listen, we need the gospel back in public schools. This is why we're doing this Crossroads Kids Club campaign, is we believe that there is such a great need for the gospel gospel to return to public schools so that children can know and love Jesus Christ with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Along the lines of what we just explored in that article, I'd like to share a testimony with you from one family in the state of Florida who's gotten involved with Crossroads Kids Club. Let me tell you quickly here. This is the Madanat family. This is Fabio, his wife Jessie, and their kids Carolina, Aaron, and Ryan. So Jessie, when she was in high school, was invited to an after-school club very similar to CKC when she was 15, and this ended up changing her life forever, changed the trajectory of her life. Her after-school club leader ended up leading her to Christ. So she was found by Christ through a public school club, much like Crossroads Kids Club. So fast forward many years later, Fabio and Jessie are married. They have kids. Now they're attending a local church in Florida, already connected with Crossroads, which they didn't know about at the time. But then Jessie made the connection in her mind that this is one of the ministries that her church serves with. And it was exactly the type of ministry that God used to bring her to himself. So the Madanats, they homeschool their kids, but they have made it their mission field to go into their local public school with Crossroads Kids Club and to teach those kids the gospel. And for some of them, like for young Ryan, he's the age of some of the kids that he's ministering to. This has become their mission field. And so I would love to show you this family's testimony and what serving in Crossroads has meant for them. This is the story of the Madanat family and their journey with Crossroads Kids Club.
Serving in Crossroads has been a joy because the children come to me with their problems with siblings and bullying, sometimes family problems, and we pray through them.
Well, I like talking to the kids, what they learned in school, and I like teaching them how to pray and pray with them.
Crossroads has been an opportunity for my kids to be on mission, to be in action, to plant the seeds where even at their young life, they understand what God's purpose is for their lives.
I just feel like children have a unique way to speak to other children. They have their own language, their own code. And when it comes to the things of God, they just have a way to communicate what matters.
It's important to me because I know that some of these kids never heard of God or never stepped foot in a church.
They're around adults all day and not older kids usually. And so they will respect the older kids a lot more than adults usually because they're like in their age range and they're a lot cooler than the adults.
As homeschoolers, we read a lot of books. We've read about Elizabeth Elliot and George Mueller and all these incredible missionaries. The cool thing is that now with Crossroads, we're able to not just read about these things, we're able to be local missionaries.
We don't have to go overseas to be a missionary. In America, there's already enough people that don't know Jesus, and it's good to go in these public schools and share the love of Christ.
I know that evangelism is something that God did, and He told us all to disciple people or evangelize to people, and we get to do that through Crossroads. And it really brings me happiness and joy to know that all my family is doing it.
We've been given, the Great Commission, and for them to live it out, going through Crossroads and trying to plant those seeds, but at the same time, they're growing as well. And those opportunities that they see through Crossroads is enhancing their relationship with Christ as well.
I learned that anyone could do it, even a 9-year-old can.
One week we were teaching about sin, and we were all sharing how we were sinners. There was this one girl, she just kept telling us that her brother was a sinner and not her. I had to guide her through that we're all sinners, me and my family and everyone there. I prayed with her. She understood that she was a sinner, and now has Jesus in her heart.
A lot of kids in the schools nowadays are exposed to bad things and not of Christ, and we should change that around and make them Christ followers and not followers of the world.
I just feel like there's so much possibility in Crossroads. If you have a public school in your neighborhood, there should be a Crossroads there. I'm telling you, kids are hungry. They want Jesus. It just takes some volunteers to sacrifice some of their time to do this program, and you will quickly see the fruit. You will see the hunger. You will see what God is doing in the public school system. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
So, folks, I can't stress enough to you the importance of what we're doing here with Crossroads Kids Club. So, one more time, reachOurSchools.com is the place to go. As of this morning, we're about 2/5 of the way there. So, we don't have a lot of time left. We've made some great strides, though. We've raised almost $15,000 to our $38,000 goal. And I want to remind you, every dollar that you give to this campaign is matched by an anonymous donor, which is pretty cool. So, make sure you go to reachOurSchools.com. When you go to that homepage, you'll see a bunch of different places where you can give. Each of them say sponsor a child. It's a green button. If you click on any of those green buttons, it takes you to where you can give securely. You can also, of course, write a letter to a child as well to encourage them in the gospel. I'd encourage you to do that today, folks. reachOurSchools.com. If you have to leave us, hope you have a great rest of the day. Coming up on the other side of this break, economic fears continuing to grow. We'll see what we make of that. Also, your partner and listener questions. I'm excited for that. Again, we'll also talk about egg prices, too. Make some sense of what's going on there on financial issues. We'll be right back after this break.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
If you don't get life right, you're not going to get all the other issues correct, period. It is the issue that impacts every other issue. Life is the central part of what keeps this republic together. It is the contract that the founding fathers passed down through multiple generations. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have life, you don't have a republic. There is a temptation out there right now. And I want to just tell you we must resist it. There's this temptation that we cast this issue aside. How does that honor God? It doesn't. And if it wasn't for preborn, I would be super just confused and depressed, because there has never been, in my opinion, a more disjointed time in the pro-life movement. We need a machine to go up against the Planned Parenthood beast. Like, we have to play offense against the pro-abortion forces in this country, okay? We have to play offense. And preborn does it in this compassionate, merciful, godly way that is just so inspiring and amazing.
Colossians 1:13 tells us, "For He has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of His dear Son." Right now, children across the country are waiting for that rescue. They're facing challenges like broken homes, peer pressure, and insecurity. But through Crossroads Kids Club, these children are finding something greater: hope, love, and a future in Christ.
If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now.
I learned that God loves me just the way that I am.
Your support can transform young lives, planting seeds of faith that will echo into eternity. Will you help us reach 100 kids? By sponsoring a child and by writing them a personal letter of encouragement, you can shine Christ's love in a place where it's needed most. Visit reachOurSchools.com today and change a child's future forever. That's reachOurSchools.com.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Good to be here with you today. Myself, Sam Case, Studio A team, all here with you this morning. Let's see what the markets are doing, folks. They've just opened, and they are roaring, having some fun, finally feeling good, at least. The Dow Jones is up about 0.2%, but the S&P 500 got close to correction territory and now is charging back upwards. 1.25% positive as we open, and the NASDAQ roaring away as well, over 2 percentage points. So that's the best the markets have looked, it seems, this week in one singular moment in time. Now, of course, keep in mind, folks, as I said earlier, any little wisp, it feels like, could change what the markets are doing. But as we've opened the show, that's what they're looking like this morning. Hey, Sam, as we're talking about Crossroads, we had a question come in from Lisa yesterday that I wanted to address. Lisa from Texas, a faithful listener. What have you got for us there?
Yeah, Lisa's asking, is Crossroads Kids Club in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
Lisa, thanks for asking that. Thank you for asking that. Not at this moment. However, there is some moves to be made to try to get a club in that area.
So get on it, Lisa. It could be you.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be you, Lisa, or anyone in that Dallas-Fort Worth, Arlington area. If you're interested in starting a club with Crossroads Kids Club, I would tell you, reach out to them. If you go to reachourschools.com, there's the information there. Of course, if you're also interested, I'll also say this, you can reach out to us, and we talk with Matt on a pretty regular basis, so we can always put in a good word for Matt there also, Lisa. But I believe the closest area to you right now, Lisa, I think is Houston, if I'm not mistaken, but they are working on trying to get a club in that DFW area, so that would be great if that could happen. Great stuff. Yes, folks, again, reachourschools.com is what we're going for here with Crossroads. All right, Sam, let's talk about these economic fears growing. No surprise, it seems like, but at the same time, I feel like we read this headline during the Biden administration, and I feel like we've been kind of seeing the same thing. There's always going to be people who are afraid.
Exactly.
But what is it looking like right now?
So right now, not too great, and President Trump should pay attention to these things because, of course, he was elected to ease these economic fears, but so far, not so much. The share of households expecting a worse financial situation in a year from now has increased to 27.4%. That is the highest number we have seen since November of 2023. The survey comes only a little bit after Trump on Monday now infamously refused to explicitly rule out a recession, and of course, consumers continue to expect that tariffs drive up costs. Here is Trump with those statements.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
So Donald Trump there doing probably the politically smart thing by not ruling out a recession, because if in the off chance there is in fact one, you know that clip would be playing over and over and over again. Democrats would just be hammering him with it till the end of his term there. But still, that didn't make the markets too happy. As you mentioned, as of Monday, a stock market sell-off wiped out $4 trillion from the S&P 500's peak last month. Of course, Trump's ongoing tariff hokey pokey on again, off again is not helping that either. I don't think it's the fact of the tariffs per se. I don't think markets like tariffs. However, it's more the way in which he's implementing them. They want to know what the rules are, and day by day, the rules keep changing, at least for right now.
Yeah, Sam, I think that's right on. There's a lot of things to consider with this, folks. First of all, on a personal level, there's never a bad time to commit to living within your means. And I get many of you in our audience have already done so, and you spent a lifetime living within your means, and hopefully you're reaping the benefits of that as well. If you're able to do that, to live within your means, you can weather financial storms far better than you may think. And I'm being completely serious with this. You can live on one income far easier than you think if you commit to live within your means. That really is such a key. And I think that's a foundational concept for us, Sam. That undergirds investing, that undergirds tithing, that undergirds all of this stuff. Your savings account, your emergency account, all of it comes back to being able to live within your means. It really does. So I would encourage you to do that, number one, from all of this stuff. If you're in that situation where you're expecting a worse financial situation this year, that's probably the best thing you can do is commit to living within your means. Second, concerning the recession talks, we talked about history earlier and why we need to know true history and why we need the Bible back in public schools. Knowing history is so important, folks. We've got to remember it's going to be fascinating to observe if the liberal media is going to revert back to factory settings when it comes to what is the widely accepted textbook definition of a recession. Because during
which
the Biden,
they will.
Yeah.
Because it's Trump.
It's exactly right. Because it's Trump, they're going to revert back and say, yes, we're in a recession after we've had 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. But they didn't seem to do that, Sam, in June of 2022 when we had this under the Biden administration. All of a sudden, everyone was like, I read an article from NPR yesterday around that time. They were like, well, that's not technically the definition of a recession. It's actually, there's more things involved in it. I guarantee you.
The NPR voices, well, actually, the definition
that's exactly
of recession is a bit more complicated.
It's a bit more complicated than this. No, this is according to all of you people. The textbook definition is what it is. 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. They will come out of the woodwork, Sam. And if we get this under Trump, they're going to hammer this thing home. Absolutely. You've got to remember that, folks, that we did have this already. We had this in the last couple of years. Thirdly, if you're concerned, if you have any concern right now, if you're concerned about the state of the markets, if you're concerned about your finances, if you're concerned about your investments, 2 things for you to do. Number 1 is read Shanna's number 1 is to pray and to seek the Lord. Number 2 is to read Shanna's partner commentary from this week because it's really good and it's helpful for that. Number 3, I would tell you, adopt what a lot of our partners are seeing in this recent drop. Yesterday, we saw several chat comments. I love to see it where people are saying, I'm actually kind of excited about this market drop because it means I get to put new money to work. That's awesome. That's
on
a great
sale.
mindset. Yeah,
all the stocks are on sale.
That's right. You will not find an attitude like that across any of the legacy media outlets. You're talking CNBC and Financial Times and all that stuff.
You will see it on Twitter, however.
You will.
I can't
well,
tell
that's
you,
true.
Seth, how many
That's
times
exactly
in the
true.
past couple days I've seen buy the dip trending, and it made me kind of happy.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, you have to consider your financial situation with all this stuff, folks. But I think it's a great concept for you to adopt that kind of mindset. Many of our partners see it. In fact, sometimes we've almost had to say, like, I've almost had to hear Shanna like rein people in to say, like, yeah, it's a great mindset. Let's not throw everything in. When the market has dipped. But yeah, that's exactly the mindset to have, and I think it's really good for you to consider this as we're seeing economic fears growing, and you might be in those situations there. So, good stuff. All right, Sam, let's get to some of our questions here that we have. Let's start with Larry. What do we got there?
So Larry says, are there any crypto-related stocks or ETFs that you think are worth looking at?
Yeah, Larry, you can check out on our list. F60 would be one of those. You can check that one out. Again, it's that's Fred F60. F60 would be one that you could potentially take a peek at there. What else do we have here, Sam?
Well, we have a question from Chuck from Facebook. He said, would you explain a warrant? I think I could answer this one. A warrant, so that means you probably want to go out of state, hang out with a friend on a couch, lie low, don't speed in school zones. That's probably what a warrant is, right, Seth?
Yes, you're exactly. Yeah, no, that would be the legal term of a warrant. This is actually referring to an investment warrant. So, yeah,
thanks for humoring me.
It's exactly right. So, Chuck, a warrant is similar to a call option. It's issued by a company to buy its stock at a specified price within a specified time period. So most warrants are an option or a right to buy 1 share of common stock, but there are a few that offer the option to buy more or less than 1 share. That's typically what that would be. And Chuck, I think you asked this question on Facebook yesterday, by the way. This is Chuck from Facebook. This can be impacted by mergers, of course. For example, stock splits can have an impact on it as well. But when the warrant is exercised, the firm typically issues new stock and then receives the proceeds, which is usually the reason most warrants will have a finite life. So I hope that answers that question for you, Chuck. Just real bare bones, brass tacks, what a investment warrant is there. So that's a good question. I appreciate you asking that, brother. Let's jump back over here now to the markets one more time, folks. Coming back just a little bit, but all still in positive territory as the Dow Jones is up 1/8%, the S&P up right under 1 full percent, the NASDAQ under 2 full percentage points right now. Still strongly positive, though. Oil is trending right around $67 a barrel, $67.50 a barrel or so. Meanwhile, the U.S. 10-year Treasury yields at 4.31%, more like 4.32% actually. So that's what we're seeing there overall when we're looking at the markets here. One of you mentioned in the comment that gas prices continue to be going down, and they do actually, right around $3.08 a gallon today. I hope that we continue to see this trend. I know, Sam, earlier in the week, I think it was earlier this week, we talked about potential of the reopening of the XL pipeline, the Keystone pipeline, I'm just more and more hopeful that we can see that, and to hopefully be able to feel that impact on our wallets, that it won't be too terrible, once we get back to that.
You're not seeing headlines about that, are you, Seth?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
all about the
That's
chaos
exactly
in
right.
the markets.
It's all about the tariffs.
That is important.
Yeah,
it's funny because Trump's greatest asset is that he's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a two-edged sword, at least in the short term when it comes to the markets, because I think for greater economic gain and situations for the United States, his unpredictability is actually quite good because other countries don't know what he's going to do with things like tariffs. But of course, the markets just hate that because they cannot figure out what's going on, and they can't game out what they're going to do for the next couple months. I think in the long term, though, it's going to turn out quite well.
Absolutely. Yep. And you know what? That's what we're about. Long term. You're seeing the things happening in the markets, and hopefully it doesn't sway you too much, because especially, if you just got in, folks, then hopefully you've committed to you're going to be in for at least a decade, hopefully more. So you're going to be weathering a lot of ups and downs there. Good stuff. All right, folks, more financial issues coming up right after this here. You don't want to go anywhere. We'll talk about egg prices and some other things. Might hear a good rant from Dan Celia as well. I'm excited for that. All on financial issues. Stick with us.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Colossians 1:13 tells us, "For he has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son." Right now, children across the country are waiting for that rescue. They're facing challenges like broken homes, peer pressure, and insecurity. But through Crossroads Kids Club, these children are finding something greater: hope, love, and a future in Christ.
If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now.
I learned that God loves me just the way that I am.
Your support can transform young lives, planting seeds of faith that will echo into eternity. Will you help us reach 100 kids? By sponsoring a child and by writing them a personal letter of encouragement, you can shine Christ's love in a place where it's needed most. Visit reachOurSchools.com today and change a child's future forever. That's reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, good to see so many of you on the chat there. Hey, just a reminder for you to get your questions in for us. We'd love to get to answer them. I know Dave and Darlene asking about the new asset allocation models. I'm sure many of you are wondering about those as well. We are on the verge of the new website, so please stay tuned for that. We're very excited for that. Obviously, those new asset allocation models will be out with that as well. So
more than on the verge, we are on the precipice.
We are very, very close. Yeah. So
the event horizon.
Yep. Thank you all so much for your patience with that, man. We just appreciate that so much. So we're excited for that. It's going to be good stuff. All right, Sam, let's go ahead and talk about these egg prices here impacting our wallets for sure. They dropped yesterday, but they're still pretty high. What have you got for us?
Yeah, some good news for a change. Been talking about market volatility and economic fears. So hopefully this is a little bit of a bright spot here. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins announced the egg prices have dropped almost $2 from a week and a half ago. Here she is making that announcement.
We're more focused on how we bring the price of eggs down in the avian bird flu for everyone. A good piece of news we just got in the last day or two is that the average cost of a dozen eggs has now gone down $1.85 since we announced our plan about a week and a half ago on February the 26th. So listen, we're going into Easter season. This is always the highest price for eggs.
So you hear there, Seth, the situation as of right now. I think we have a chart showing the egg prices. You'll see a dramatic jump up, and now you're dropping right off now that the Trump administration has changed tact a little bit, now importing eggs to increase demand and also taking efforts to combat the bird flu more head on. A dozen eggs were $5.51 on Tuesday, more than $2 cheaper than an all-time high of $8.17 earlier in March. So that is incredible drop off there, but still, that is still really, really high. So the Trump administration needs to avoid making the mistake that we saw during the Biden administration, saying prices have come down. Look, it's so cheap now. It's still not. $5 is still quite a lot for a staple like eggs. And restaurants are currently feeling the brunt of it. One manager in New York City said of last week, it was $230 for 30 dozen eggs. That's nearly $100 more for the same amount of eggs in December.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. It's funny, the Democrats did the same thing with gas prices too, didn't they? You remember when they were up around $5 a gallon in June of 2022, and then we talked about this earlier this week with the draining of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and then it was like $3.50 a gallon, and they were like, look at how cheap gas prices are. They're so cheap, they're so affordable. Well, I hate to break it to you, but we had under $2 a gallon under the Trump administration. That's cheap. So same thing here, Sam, for sure.
The term gaslighting gets thrown around a lot to the point it doesn't mean anything, but that is the definition of gaslighting there, saying $5 of gas is cheap when it's not. So the Trump administration shouldn't do that with the eggs either, but it is good news to see that it's coming down.
It is, and hopefully that's a trend that we continue to see there. I do think, Sam, speaking of trends, we're seeing a lot of this, folks, is going to be maybe some dirty cleanup. We got to get our hands dirty a little bit to clean up the mess that was left. There was a big mess left from the Biden administration. And so Trump's got a lot of hands working on a lot of things, trying to clean up a lot of things. Gas prices, the border, restructuring and reorganizing a military that has been decimated by DEI policies and by vaccine mandate policies as well. So many things, egg prices that we're seeing here, the economy. So I do believe that we're going to see the fruits of this, absolutely. But we might be in that spot right now where we're getting our hands dirty. So interesting stuff for sure. Speaking of egg prices, I wonder if Craig Halgard has a thing to say about that. We'll hear the Ag Report right here with Craig, and then we'll come back after that. Here's Craig Halgard with today's Ag Report.
This is Craig Halgard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for March 12th. Well, yesterday was the monthly USDA supply and demand report, but traders who were hoping that the report would offer some fresh news came away disappointed. Corn saw last year's yield left unchanged at 179.3 bushels per acre, and we're also given an ending stocks number that was unchanged from the previous report as well. May corn finished today a penny and 3/4 lower at 470 1/4. Like corn, the USDA made no adjustments to domestic soybean yield or ending stocks number. Perhaps more interestingly, they also left the size of the Brazilian and Argentinian crops unchanged. As a result, May beans were 2 3/4 cents lower, 10.11 1/4. Now, unlike corn and beans, wheat did see a little bit of adjustment to the ending stocks number, but unfortunately for the bulls, it was a slight increase in stocks. This was the case for the world stocks number as well, as world stocks increased by about 2.5 million metric tons over last month's numbers. As a result, Minneapolis May wheat was 7 1/4 cents lower at 5.97 1/4. Kansas City dropped by 6.5 cents to close at 5.72, and mid Chicago 5 3/4 cents lower at 5.56 3/4. Cotton futures didn't receive any fresh news to trade, as the USDA left the U.S. ending stocks for cotton unchanged. As a result, really, they didn't do anything. May futures finished the session unchanged at $66 per hundredweight. Livestock futures were full of red ink at the close. We had April live cattle $1, 2.5 2.5 cents lower at $199.55 per hundredweight. April feeder cattle declined by 22.5 cents to settle at $277.70 per hundred. And we had April lean hog futures $1.75 lower as they ended the session at $86.55 per hundredweight. Milk saw their production forecast for the 2025 year reduced because of lower expected output per cow, which more than offset the slight increase in cow inventories. That seemed to light a little bit of a fire under the milk futures as we had April futures up 28 points, closing the day at 17.44. This has been Craig Haugard with your Financial Issues Egg Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
All right, folks, we promised a good rant from Dan Celia. Can't pass this one up. This is a great one on the need for improvement on the public education system. Dan never minced words about this topic, did he, Sam? He didn't mince words about a lot of things. But
I really can't think of anything where he was, super nuanced. And you couldn't really tell what his opinion was.
That's exactly right. You listen to him for about 10 seconds and you know what his opinion is. And so that's true in this clip here on the need for improvement in the public education system. Here's our founder, Dan Celia.
Our public education system is absolutely pathetic. But how do you do that if you're a Democrat when the last thing you want to do is upset the teachers union? The only way you're going to improve public health system is to have competition. And the only way you're going to have competition is to have voucher systems for our public school system. So look, it's about competition. They don't want to do that. I don't know how they think they're going to do it, but they don't want to do it. Plus, you got to remember, the Democrats can't lose the public education system and the teachers unions. They can't lose them, because that is their source of indoctrinating students, to indoctrinate them to all their progressive agenda. That's what's been going on for the last 10 years. So they can't lose that. So I don't know how they're going to do that. And I'm not so sure. I think everybody would agree, myself included, we need improvement in our public education system. They've been trying to do it for 20 years. Give me one reason why our kids in the inner city have to be educated differently than the kids in this suburbs. There is no reason. There's no reason why they have to have books that are falling apart, teachers that are working crowd control as opposed to teaching.
Boy, that's, as soon as Dan said it's pathetic, I was like, yes, that makes perfect sense what he was saying. But he's spot on with this. And folks, I hope you all can see, the dire situation in public schools is not something for us to run from. It's something that, Christians need to get in there as a mission field. And so that's why we're promoting Crossroads. That's why we believe in them. So one more time, reachoursschools.com is the place to go. You can follow the QR code that's up on our screen if you're watching on any of our TV feeds, reachoursschools.com. So many of you in the chat mentioned that you were able to see yesterday's Fox Business special with Charles Payne on faith-based investing, BRI, honoring God with your money. I love to see those comments there in the chat. I thought what you guys said was very, very well said and spot on. I got to watch it yesterday, and let me just say this, first of all, no promotion in any sense of Fox News. I have mixed feelings about Fox News in general, but what I saw of Charles Payne is he seems very solid. In fact, not long ago, he had Dan Celia as a guest on his program, numerous times actually. And so it really seemed like Charles Payne was right on with a lot of what he was saying when it comes to this idea of faith-based investing. Now, when I heard that, I was a little bit... I don't know if I could say concerned. I was maybe a little bit concerned.
Could be kind of a mush phrase.
Yeah,
right?
it is. It's really a general phrase. But when he described it, it was basically biblically responsible investing. It was basically what we do here. And so he had a lot of different guests on to highlight this. The big thing I took away from it is I was very encouraged. I was very encouraged to see so many people are waking up to the need to invest their money in a way that honors God. And not just to do the generic faith-based investing, but specifically investing in companies that keep shareholder dollars out of wicked things. Now, that said, there were certain ETFs that were promoted, certain holdings that were promoted that I personally would love to do some more looking into to see if they are truly clean. I know ETFs can be a tough thing with that as it is. But overall, very, very pleased. There was one guest who I might try to get on the show at some point who is promoting a pro-life bank and Christian banking. So just different things like that overall seem to be really encouraging for those of us who want to honor God with our money. And we know that is you if you're listening to this show, unless you're someone who's just listening to the show wanting to criticize it. But my guess is if you're listening to the show and you found us and you've listened this far, you're probably at least interested in the idea of honoring God with your money. Well, folks, that is why we are here, is to show you how to do that. And let me close our show encouraging you in the scriptures today. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." This is God's very word to his children. He strengthens his people. He provides for his people in all things. Let's be faithful to him today with what he's given us. Well, I appreciate you all so much. God bless you. Lord willing, we'll do it again tomorrow for financial issues. Until then, remember, it's all his. Let's be found good and faithful stewards. God bless you.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.